Welcome to Murder with the Misses. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy. And today we have a special guest in the studio. Say hello.
I'm Haley.
Today we're going to talk about Thomas Brown. We'll refer to him as Tom. This is going to be our first real two-part episode because there's so much information and I will not even get into all of it. Just the parts to help you draw your own thoughts and opinions. And before we get started, we want to say that our hearts go out to everyone affected in this area due to the recent Smokehouse Creek fire in the Texas Panhandle that spread into Oklahoma. If you didn't know, this fire burned over 1 million acres, taking along with it homes, businesses, cattle, and 2 lives. Now let's talk about Thomas Brown. If you're anything like me, by the end of this, 2 things will be perfectly clear. 1, Tom Brown lost his life. And 2, someone's lying about it. The rest, well, you'll see.
We are going to Canadian, Texas, back in 2016. 18-year-old Tom is a senior in high school, living with his mother and stepfather, Penny and Chris Meek. His older brother, Tucker, is in college at Oklahoma State University. Since Canadian is a small town in the northeastern corner of the Texas Panhandle, it wasn't uncommon or too far of a distance for kids to go to college in Oklahoma and still be able to drive home for holidays or weekend visits. Tom was a very funny, popular, and sweet kid. He had been class president for his junior and his senior year. He was respectful, a real yes ma'am, no sir kind of kid. He was into a lot of different things, but most notably the theater program and football, which is big in those parts. The town's high school football stadium seats 3,000 people, which is more than the total population of the town itself. He was 6'1", tall, and weighed about 180 pounds. So he was an offensive lineman on a team that had won the Class 2A Division I state championship for 2 years running.
It sounds like they had a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it. He was second string, but in October 2016, he was bumped up to a starter. Only a few games later, he was put back on the string, and he ended up quitting the team. He said he didn't want to spend his time on the sidelines. Now in November, he ended a long-distance relationship with his girlfriend, Sage, since she was already in college and the long distance just wasn't working for them. She did come into town to spend Thanksgiving with her family, and they saw each other at a football game on November 22nd. While they didn't talk at the game face-to-face, he did text her later and said he was sad and felt like a loser. She just responded that she was sad too, and he wasn't a loser. They were still friends, and they kept in touch. She texted him again on the 23rd, but he didn't respond that time though. The 23rd was Thanksgiving Eve, and he left his house just after 6 p.m. to meet some friends. He borrowed his mom's debit card to get gas while he was out. He met up with Caleb King and Michael Castletine. Caleb is actually the son of a state representative. But they met up in the middle school parking lot, then cruised town in Tom's red 2009 Dodge Durango. After nothing interesting was happening while they made Tom's Loop, which is his usual driving route around town, they went back to the school parking lot and met up with Christian Webb. Michael decided to go on home, so Caleb and Tom got into Christian's Dodge Charger, and they set back out. They went to their usual spots, and Christian took a picture of Tom on the walking bridge, wearing a thin black pullover, black Canadian Wildcats t-shirt, faded jeans, and tennis shoes. Christian said he seemed really happy.
They ended up back in the school parking lot at around 11:15 p.m., and Caleb went home. Tom and Christian talked about him coming over the next day to play pool, then they went their separate ways because Tom had a midnight curfew. Tom doesn't miss curfew, hardly ever. If he does, it's only a couple of minutes, and he always calls or texts so they wouldn't worry. So by 12:10, when Tom wasn't home, Penny and Tucker started trying to get a hold of him. Just before 12:30, the text started showing as undeliverable, so Penny woke up Chris and told him she was going out to look for Tom. Tucker and a friend of his went out separately to search as well. Tucker says in interviews that he was afraid Tom may have been in a car accident and he was worried he wouldn't find him in time to help. So they were extremely worried. After about an hour, Tucker dropped his friend off at his own house and kept searching. Shortly after that, Penny returned home and started calling the friends that Tom was out with that night. Caleb, Michael, and Christian go out to search as well. Keep in mind that this is a town of about 2,700 people, so there aren't a lot of places to go. By 2:30 a.m., with no sign of him, Penny calls the sheriff's department. Now police have started searching as well.
And like you said, people that town this small don't have a lot of places to go too. You know, with this many people searching already, they're probably already passing each other on a lot of the roads.
Right, because, I mean, we live in a small town too, and it'd be really hard to go on some of these roads and not see another of the 5 or 6 cars that are now out looking for him. But there was no sign of Tom. By 7:30 a.m., Penny and Chris were in a meeting with the newly appointed sheriff, Nathan Lewis. He had only been sheriff for a couple of months at this point, but he had already had a run-in with the family. As a deputy, about a year and a half before this, he was off duty and heading home when he saw Tom and some friends hanging out in front of the movie theater in town. Lewis said he put Tom in his truck and told him that they needed to go home. Tom said that Lewis was cussing at him and singled Tom out. Some said he put Tom in the back of the patrol truck as an intimidation tactic. Tom's word he used was that he was accosted. Penny had filed a complaint about Lewis, but the now Sheriff Lewis assured them that there were no hard feelings. On this day, he told the family that he thought Tom was just a high school kid who went out and partied and just didn't come home on time. Right after this meeting, Sheriff Lewis gets a call.
Because what also happens this morning is that Christian and her dad, who happened to own a helicopter sales and service company, took a helicopter out. From the air, they found the Durango parked under a small grove of trees on a dirt road across from the water treatment plant on the north edge of town. Christian didn't even know this road existed and doubted Tom did either. There had been no recent rain, so no footprints were around the vehicle except for one light shoe print outside the driver's door. Also near that door is what they called a urine mark. The doors were unlocked. Inside were cans of smokeless tobacco, 2 pairs of football cleats, towels, jumper cables, a pillow, and a clown costume. They said that was for a school play.
Yeah, it was.
What they didn't find were his keys, wallet, cell phone, or his mom's debit card.
Yeah, Michael's card was in there.
Oh, Michael's cards was there where it had fallen in between the seat, but Penny's wasn't there.
Right. So you could tell it looked like it was hanging outside of a shopping bag, or maybe it was just tangled up in a shopping bag, and it had literally fallen in between the seats in the front, so you could see it from the back seat.
Oh, okay.
It was just dangling there. And our kids always put ours in their wallets so they don't lose them if we ever send them to the store for something. So that may be an option as to where the card went as well. Penny's card. They reported a thin strip of blood on the inside of the front driver door by the handle that was small, like a paper cut, or like if you busted a knuckle. There was a shell casing for a .25 caliber gun on the passenger floorboard, but no gunshot residue, no blood spatter, no sign that a gun had went off inside the Durango. The community was already in action. Some postponed their Thanksgiving dinners to search for Tom on foot, horseback, four-wheelers. Even another helicopter came in to help. For days they searched. Game wardens even brought in a tracking dog, but nothing was found within a 2-mile grid of where the car was found. The sheriff called in bloodhounds from the prison in Amarillo, and they tracked a scent for about 3/4 of a mile before they lost the scent in a marsh. Thanksgiving night, the sheriff returned the Durango to the family. Tucker looked it over and noted nothing out of the ordinary. The sheriff said he couldn't sleep that night, though, thinking about the car, so the next morning he had it towed back in, and they processed it all over again. Nothing new was found this time either. When the superintendent stopped in to check on the family, he asked if they were able to track Tom's school laptop. He always kept it in his backpack and in his Durango. He only brought it inside the house if he had homework. Since it wasn't in his room, and it was not mentioned by police as being in the Durango, they realized it was missing. Also, it would be a long shot anyways because it would only be able to be tracked if it was being used.
It did bring up the fact that his backpack was missing, though.
Right, because at that point they hadn't even thought about the backpack.
Yeah.
But there's so much going on at a time like this that things like this might get missed. So it's a good thing that the superintendent came by.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least to give him something to look at, something to look into.
Yeah, and it did. They checked bank records, and surveillance footage was pulled from the few places around town that had cameras. And here's what they saw. At 11:26 p.m., the Durango heads in the direction of Tom's home. Between 11:28 and 11:36 p.m., Penny's debit card is used at the gas station to get gas. At 1:10 a.m., the Durango heads the direction of Tom's home. 1 minute later, at 1:11, the Durango heads away from home. At 5:28 a.m., the Durango heads towards home again. But at 5:30 a.m., the Durango heads away from his home. At 5:56 a.m., the Durango goes in the direction of the water treatment plant. It is seen moving slowly on the dirt road, going through an already open gate and parking. The headlights were turned off, making it total darkness, so no one can be seen getting in or out of the vehicle.
You know, that makes you wonder if someone knew that they wouldn't be able to be seen on that camera.
Right.
Or, you know, if it was just that unfortunate. And all of these people are driving around looking for him and his Durango. So the fact that, you know, they all missed each other is kind of weird too.
Yeah, because now not only are all of his friends and family out searching for him, now we can see Tom's Durango driving up and down the streets multiple times.
So was it seen on the cameras like during the times that they was looking for him?
There was one report that I watched that said that like it showed the Durango go by or what could have been the Durango. And then you see a couple minutes later, Tucker's 4Runner come by, go in the opposite direction. I've only seen that once, and it's not reported on the AG's report, which is where I got that timeline from. Mm-hmm. So I didn't put that part in there, but they are saying that, yes, they would have had to pass him, but Tom's Durango could have turned off on a different road before Tucker's came by, because he would have definitely noticed that was his brother if that's what he's looking for.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing is weird. Police start interviewing people. On November 26th, Penny and Chris are interviewed by Deputy Brent Clapp. This starts a narrative that has people theorizing to this day. Many questions need to be asked. All angles have to be considered. And when Penny was asked what first came to mind when she heard where the Durango was found, she immediately responded, "I thought he committed suicide." She said it ran in the family, and she thought that maybe he was distraught about his recent events of quitting the football team and his breakup with Sage. When asked how she thought he might have done it, she said the choking game, because all the guns and medications at the house were accounted for. The choking game is also called the blackout game, and I will not explain it on here. Most people know what it is. It was big on TikTok a few years ago, and it is very dangerous and shouldn't be called a game at all. But you can surmise kind of what this is. But she said his mood was normal. He had landed the lead in an upcoming play at school, and no one close to him believed he would have went so far out in the woods for really anything. He was not outdoorsy. He was wearing thin clothes on a cold night. So they don't believe he would have made it past that 2-mile grid search area that they did within the first 24 hours. So they asked if he would have left with someone that he didn't know. All Penny could think of was his love for WWE wrestling, and he had talked about wanting to pursue that, even though it would be a big stretch. She did want to mention it. In an interview with Tom's ex, Sage, she said that he had mentioned that sometimes he liked to wear adult diapers for pleasure. A couple of his other friends also mentioned that he had opened up about this recently, and Penny confirmed that when he was in 5th or 6th grade, some younger cousins were staying around with them, and she caught him wearing one of their clean diapers. They talked about it, and since then, it hadn't been an issue. Even if it was, if you have a fetish that doesn't hurt anybody else, in no way, shape, or form does that negate the fact that Tom is missing. But the theory became that he was ashamed of this and committed suicide. This is where the investigation splits.
There's been different theories for each side, and now it's going to get worse. And theories are fine, but you can't stop looking at other stuff if you have to look at all the angles.
You definitely have to look at all angles.
A lot of people will get stuck on one thing that they noticed and
Right.
just disregard everything else. So.
Right. And that, I believe that that's kind of what happened here. It's almost like they were like, okay, suicide. Okay, sounds good. Let's go with that. That's what we'll go with. So they kind of stayed in one lane, and Penny and the family and everyone else stayed in another lane. And that's why this case is so frustrating, because they are so split There's only like 2 things that they agree on.
Yep.
And everything else is just them going at each other, button heads. Penny ended up hiring a private investigator, Philip Klein. And this guy is a real piece of work. He's loud, arrogant, and always right, even if he's not. And he can be intimidating. He's like 6'6". He's a big guy. But he has a high success rate, so you can't argue with facts. The sheriff's office brought in the FBI and the Texas Rangers, and the theories really started flying. Sage had said that one time, Tom had asked what would happen if I just jumped in front of this train right now. Even though she said that he wouldn't have actually done it, this supports the theory that he had suicidal thoughts. Another friend, Macy, said that her and Tom had a conversation once about how easy it would be to disappear as long as you didn't use your cell phone or credit cards, anything that could be traceable. So another theory is that he ran away to Colorado. The Rangers and the Sheriff's Department started asking if Tom was gay, even though I didn't see anything that was released to the public that would support that theory. They told family this theory and said that friends said he was alive and just ran off. When Penny asked what friends exactly said this, the police said, "Oh, well, we can't tell you that." But the sheriff did tell some of his theories on a local radio show, and I left a lot of that out. But there's a radio show down there that everybody and their dog has been on, and they keep going on it. Like the investigators, the sheriff, the PI, the family, everybody goes on this show and just spreads their business around, which I get it. They want to keep the case out there and active, but who knows what to believe with all these theories going around.
Yeah, and at that point, it's like, who do you believe? Because personally, If I had heard it myself, I'd believe the family. But if a police officer is telling me something...
Exactly. What do they know that I don't know? Because they keep stuff close to the chest. They don't tell everything.
Yes.
Ugh. Klein, the PI, is theorizing about what he calls the undernet. It's like the dark web, saying this is where people with fetishes find others, but also find dark people. And maybe he met with someone just before midnight, things went wrong, and he was murdered. They were all over the place, and it doesn't stop.
On February 2nd, 2017, 4 miles east of town, Tom's backpack was reported as found by an electric worker out on Lake Marvin Road. It was actually originally seen around mid-January. There was a candlelight vigil held for Tom on February 1st, and when the worker saw it and learned about Tom's disappearance, he went back and looked. When he saw it was still there, he reported it. It was upright behind a fence and about 4 to 5 feet from the road under a tree. Inside the backpack was books, papers, and the laptop. It had been there for a while. It was indented into the ground, wet and moldy, but it didn't provide any new information outside of adding another location to the search, but nothing was found.
Now, this does cause some more frustration.
Definitely for me. I have a map of where these things are located as we go through this case, and it's frustrating as hell. You'll see. You'll see. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. When you already know the story, it's hard to rein it all in because I just want to scream and shake people, and my bad. But they went back to interrogating the friends by April of 2017. Christian was picked up after class one day at OSU by the OSU police and brought in for questioning by the FBI and the Texas Rangers. They believed that she had the friend in Colorado, Nathan, that she had introduced Tom to, and Tom had ran off and went to stay with him. Christian's parents were out eating dinner one night shortly after that, and the sheriff came into the restaurant with his family. He made it a point to tell her parents that Christian had been cleared of any wrongdoing because they knew Tom was in Colorado with an older man, even though Nathan is a teenager. So I don't know where the older man came into the story. Caleb was also interrogated and told he was clear. Michael admitted to police that he liked to party and he had sold weed to the kids at school. He wanted to be 100% honest with them about himself and let them know he was being honest about Tom. Even the football team was interviewed, and a teammate, Chris Jones, was singled out. He had been in trouble for fracturing another kid's eye socket, but he said he didn't know anything about Tom and he had heard about Tom's disappearance when the rest of the team was told at football practice on Thanksgiving Day. Yes, they are that football oriented that they practice high school football on Thanksgiving Day. Well, this is going on with the law enforcement side. On the PI side, he called in a cadaver dog, Chance. He alerted when brought to the Durango, indicating that a dead body had been in the car at some point. But the case still stalls out. Penny did a press conference in July 2017, stating a Facebook page had been started, Moms for Tom, and they were distributing yellow ribbons. She called for the sheriff to turn the case over to the state. In September 2017, a young female called, giving information that only authorities knew, and she said she needed to clear her conscience. She said she overheard someone she knows say that Tom's body was placed on Lake Marvin Road, the same road that the backpack was found on.
This is what I was talking about, with the frustration. Lake Marvin Road comes up a lot.
And it will keep coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, Darren doesn't know this whole case yet, so if he gets riled, I'll let you know. Now, on October 14th, 2017, around 150 volunteers gathered at Lake Marvin Road to search. They were told the main things to look for was a .25 caliber handgun and a cell phone, and of course, Tom. About 6 minutes into the search, a woman found an iPhone in the grass. The phone was in almost perfect condition, even though the grass had been mowed several times, and it had rained a lot in the almost 1 year since Tom's disappearance. So surely this couldn't have been Tom's. Also found was deteriorated clothing, a shoe, and a pistol case. Everyone agrees on the fact that the phone was obviously planted there. But by who? And this is where we're going to stop for this part of the story. I know progress is being made. Everyone is on the edge of their seats. But this is only half the story, and there's so much more to go. Please be sure to tune into our next one because, like I said, this is a two-parter.
Yes, so this is part one. The other thing is, like they said, .25 caliber gun
Yes.
was one of the things. Man, that's an odd caliber.
It is an odd caliber, and the gun case that they found out there with the phone, it said it was small enough to fit one of these, but it could also fit a whole bunch of other ones too. So
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like you don't hear of that very often.
right, like a 22 or a 9mm. There's all kinds.
But 25s, I mean, because you try to find bullets for one of them.
That's where you're going.
No, seriously. I mean,
No, because I know what you mean. Yeah.
honestly,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
Pistol
do.
Annie?
Yeah, I know a little bit.
yeah.
Okay. Well, all I know is I had a 25 pistol once, and I was like, "Is this going to do some damage?" And they said, "Yeah, if you shoot them in the eye." So
Well, yeah,
Oh.
but, I mean, yeah, it'll piss somebody off. Basically.
yeah, so they're not really like high caliber damage inducing guns.
No, but they're such an oddball gun that there's not very many of them out there. Like,
I gotcha.
so that's why that just kind of drew my attention right there.
Yeah, you do know your guns.
We would also like to add, if you or anyone you know is needing help, please contact the National Suicide Helpline. Just call or text 988 from your phone and talk to someone. You are not alone.
Well, thank you guys for joining. Tune in next time for part 2 of Tom Brown. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.